This is also our last meeting. I will say yes. Sorry, Katarina was saying that we can start the recording, and you were before me. Great. So we're welcoming Chris Ruane, and this is also our last meeting for EAMBA Exchange, and it's been a journey rich with events and meetings, and we had the heart meditation after the start of the war in Ukraine. So and we thought that would be a great opportunity to invite Chris to close this year as a bridge into the new year. Yeah, it's the last meeting for 2022. Sorry, not 23. Yeah, so for those who don't know Chris, would you like to share shortly about your long biography and your incredible support and contribution to society? So maybe.
Yeah, and it's a pleasure to be here with EAMBA, and it's lovely that you've got not just your names but your countries, because that was going to be my first question, was which countries do you represent? And then the second question, just to get a feel, is, which sectors do you work in? Is it the workplace, education, health, prisons? Could you just put your hand up if it was in education? If it's in the workplace? Yeah. If it's in the health service? Yeah, so there's an overlap over there. So that gives me a flavour of where you're from and the sectors you're in. I was a primary school teacher for 15 years. I ended up being the vice principal in the school I went to when I was 3. So spent a long time in that school. And I first came across meditation, but not mindfulness, in 1987, when the school was being inspected. The staff got the jitters, the head called in the school nurse, and we did tension and release throughout the body and some breathing. I used that with the children in my care, up to 39 children in the class in those days, for relaxation when they came in off the playground, to focus their attention. I used it, it was a Catholic school, I used it in RE with some visualizations, which Ignatius Loyola kind of pioneered in the Catholic Church in the 1500s. I would use it to calm them down after gym or football. And I did this for 2 or 3 years, and some of those children then are now in their 40s. So it was a long time ago. Came across meditation, mindfulness meditation about 14 years ago when I was helping my daughter with the comparative religions. I was looking at Buddhism, and then didn't realize the centrality of mindfulness meditation. Started practicing and downloaded 300 podcasts from Spirit Rock, practicing on the train, going down to London, on the train back. It was the Dharma talks as well as the meditations, old philosophy. I practiced it by myself for 6 years. And then thought I got so much out of it, I wanted to take it to Parliament. So I didn't know anybody in the mindfulness world, and so I approached Professor Lord Richard Layard, who is a world expert, and he's a Labour Lord, now it's the Lords, but he's also a professor at the London School of Economics, a world expert on well-being. He wrote Happiness, A Good Childhood, and Thrive, and Happiness, and New Science. And he's nearly 90, and he's been considered for a Nobel Prize. He was well connected. He put me in contact with Mark Williams. Mark Williams, you will probably all know, wrote Peace in a Frantic World. And this Mark Williams was one of the 3 scientists, Zindel Ziegel from Toronto, John Teasdale from Cambridge, and Mark from Bangor, and then Oxford, produced the science which convinced the National Institute for Clinical Excellence in the United Kingdom to accept mindfulness for repeat episode depression on the British National Health Service. It's been in place now for 18 years. I think it's also been adopted in Canada, the US, and in Sweden. So it has fine science and a fine history. Mark came down to Parliament. We followed this book. He came down in January 2013 and introduced our first lessons. We had 22 politicians from the House of Commons and from the House of Lords on a cross-party basis, left and right together. We practiced, I wanted to start a policy group straight away. John Kibberton said, slow down. This is a 1,000-year project. Oh no, I'm going to be 1,054 when it finishes. But he was right to slow down, but I wasn't prepared to leave it for 1,000 years. So we got on with it. We practiced for 6 months and then formed our Mindfulness All-Party Parliamentary group. And that, we formed the Mindfulness Initiative before that to help with the formation of a cross-party group. And the Mindfulness Initiative, led by Jamie Bristow for the past 10 years, helped us to do a parliamentary report called Mindful Nation. We took the evidence for it in 2014, presented it in Parliament in 2015. I'm a Labour politician. This was a Conservative government. 5 ministers attended the launch of this. 3 ministers spoke, including the cabinet member for education. So it's been well received. It's been translated into Spanish, Portuguese and Croatian. And I think it's time for an update. I think it's time for not just a mindful nation, but a mindful planet to take into account not just the health, education, criminal justice and the workplace that's in here, but also the new challenges, climate anxiety, climate change, political polarization, post-COVID recovery. But whether that will happen, we'll have to see. So we took evidence for this. We launched it. It's been well received. I take this to every parliament I go to. I spoke at the Google 2.0 conference in Dublin in 2014. There were 300 people from 69 countries. I was asked by lots of them to go to their parliament. I only managed 3. That was the German, the Dutch and the Welsh before I lost my seat the following year. Some say in the mindfulness community say that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because that released me for 2 years to then go and visit lots of different parliaments around the world. And then I got back into Parliament in 2017 for 2 years. Then I've been out since 2019. And I was asked to chair the Mindfulness Initiative's global network of either politicians or mindfulness advocates in 50 countries around the world. We've introduced, well, not the Mindfulness Initiative, but there are 14 countries that have introduced mindfulness into their legislatures. The UK wasn't the first. Sweden was the first in 2011 by Anne-Marie Broden, who was a politician on the right, and Tim Ryan was the second. And Tim's written this book, which I'll refer to later, Mindful Nation, written before our Mindful Nation. He introduced it into the US Congress in 2011. We were late to the scene, 2013. But it just shows you, within 18 months, 3 politicians in 2 continents, in 3 countries, without knowing what the other was doing, felt the urge to take mindfulness to Parliament. There was something in the zeitgeist, something in the air at that time. We all did it in those three parliaments. Since that time, the following countries, I think I've got most of them, have at least introduced it, mindfulness. Some of them have not been able to sustain it, but they have introduced it. And they include Germany, France, and they've got a mindfulness initiative to support them. Ireland, that was at the behest of the Irish speaker, and they have a mindfulness initiative there. Wales, who have a mindfulness initiative. Scotland have a mindfulness initiative. United Kingdom, we've got a big one. Belgium have also tried it, I think, in one of their, I'm not sure if it's the national parliament, but one of their federal parliaments. Denmark, Canada, and they've got a mindfulness initiative. Croatia over the past 2 years, and the European Commission, which we've had no direct part in. That was done by Chris Tamgidi from Germany, who introduced mindfulness to the German Parliament. The EU Commission and have trained 22 of the 32 Director Generals at the EU Commission. Chris's company, Awaris, also won the contract for the United Kingdom Parliament 18 months ago. There may be one or two other parliaments that I've missed there. I'm currently concentrating on the Australian Parliament and the New Zealand Parliament, and the Speaker of the House of Commons wrote to the Speaker of the House of Commons in Australia saying what great benefits mindfulness had brought in the United Kingdom and urged them to adopt it. That Speaker took that forward, and he has now got politicians on the left and the right uniting in quite a poisonous, well, not poisonous, but polarized political situation in the Australian Parliament. So we've had good success on that. And this is a document produced by the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, which the Commonwealth is 58 countries from around the world, all 5 continents. And they asked parliaments, politicians, what policies or what practices they had included or introduced in their parliaments to help the mental health of their politicians. And this is available online, a mental health toolkit for Commonwealth parliaments. So this was only published in May of this year. I've taken this everywhere I've gone, to the Croatian Parliament, to the Health Committee there, to Brazilian, Uruguayan and Chilean parliaments over the past 6-7 weeks. This kind of endorses, includes, of the 18 well-being initiatives, 2 of them are mindfulness, one in the United Kingdom, the other in the Canadian Parliament. This kind of legitimizes, normalizes well-being in a parliamentary situation and can be used. I think you could use it if you were going to a company to say, look, mindfulness is normal. This is a document produced by the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. It's being used in parliaments around the world. It is a good document. I recommend it. The pitch that I used in Parliament to engage politicians was different to different people. With some, it was spiritual. I knew that there were Hindus, one Hindu, one Buddhist. In the main, I tried to, and some people get upset at this, not to introduce the spirituality. That comes down the track at a later date for many people. But I tried, the ones I knew who were suffering because they'd been in the media spotlight, I tried to explain from a rebalancing position. For others, I would stress the executive function, the attention, the focus that could help them perform as a professional politician. And what I noted what Mark Williams did in the first lesson 10 years ago, and he used his hand and his arm. He said that the mind and the body need to be in the same place at the same time, so that you can fully concentrate on what you're doing, and you can take in, you can be present, you can have this kind of mindful awareness. But many people are drawn to the past, their body's in the present, but their mind's in the past. I added this for rumination, and I would explain this to people, to MPs, over a cup of tea in the tea rooms, and many of them immediately got that. And they used the breath to bring it back, bring themselves back to the present. Some people live their lives like this, with their mind in the future planning. Like I added a bit of that to kind of highlight it, and again bringing the breath back to the present, using the breath to bring it back to the present, so we're fully focused on what's before us: a beautiful baby, a sunset, a difficult problem. You're all aware of the Harvard study of 2010, where they pinged thousands of people, said, what are you thinking about now? And only 47% were thinking about what was in front of them at that point in time. They were either the past or the present. And as John Kabat-Zinn said, that's half of your life gone. If you can learn to bring yourself back to the present time and time again with this mental muscle, then you will be a better person and live a fuller life. So the pitch was either from struggling, rebalancing, executive function, or occasion spirituality. But it has succeeded over the years. We've had 330 politicians, 800 members of staff who have had mindfulness training in the United Kingdom Parliament. And the success, I think, was down to the sustainability, well, not sustainability because it wasn't funded until 18 months ago, was down to having that continuous practice. So we'd have 2 lessons per year for newcomers. And once they finished, we would, Chris Cullen, fair play to him, came down from Oxford, 40-mile trip at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 40 miles back at 8 o'clock at night from Parliament. And he would provide not just the new lessons for the new cohorts, but at 5:30 he would start a lesson for the ones that had already been on the course. At 1 o'clock he would do it for the staff. At 5:30 he would do it for the continuing members, and at 7:15 he would do it for the new cohort. So that continuous practice is what has enabled us to get to those figures of 330 over the past 10 years. Other parliaments had quick uptake. I think there's somebody from the Netherlands here. They had, I think they've got 125 MPs. They had 25 engaged in 2 cohorts over 6 months, but there wasn't that continuation. So having that continuing practice over the years is very, very important. That's what we did in Parliament and in government. There was a separate but parallel initiative which I'd like to tell you about, because I think it might be, it's also gaining traction in other countries at the moment. There was a wonderful woman called Marion Furr who worked in the British Department of Health. The Department of Health, the National Health Service, is the biggest employer in Western Europe. It employs 1.5 million people. Its headquarters in Richmond House in Whitehall has got 2,000 people. Marion worked there, and she taught mindfulness to 1,000 of those people in the HQ of the British National Health Service. She also taught it in other departments in Whitehall. She was, like all of you are, was a fantastic catalyst in her community, in her workplace. So she did that. More recently in Croatia, Eva Mia Krušlin has convinced their national training school, which trains their civil servants how to be a civil servant, but she's introduced mindfulness on a kind of ad hoc basis over the past 2 years. She asked me to visit their health committee, which I did 2 months back, to state the case, and I took this, and I took Mindful Nation and other reports to there to convince them, A, to make this a permanent arrangement for their national training school, and also to introduce it into the Parliament, and then hopefully from that will flow policy in other areas of like health and education. So that's a one to watch over there. If she is successful, if that is taken forward, that's other countries. I would hold that up as best practice around the world and say to politicians in these 50 countries, it's being done in Croatia. And the third one is Wickamp from the Netherlands, who I spoke to last Friday for the first time. There are 20,000, I think, civil servants in the Netherlands, and they have employed 7 full-time mindfulness teachers who teach people in different departments mindfulness, and also some of the better ones, how to teach mindfulness. So there's 3 good civil service programs that I've come across over the past 10 years. There's probably others as well, but I think a civil servant finishes or starts at 21, 22 after university and works till 60 or 70, perhaps even 80 in years to come. They're there for a long time. Politicians in the United Kingdom, their average lifespan is 9 years before they're kicked out. So I think that's a good thing to have civil servants who are trained in mindfulness. Now, more specifically to what I think is the main problem in mindfulness, and you will know, certainly in the United Kingdom, is how people come to mindfulness because of a passion. Like me, it's a gift that they've been given and they want to give it away, but they also have mortgages, they have children, and they need to earn an income from it as well. And that's a big issue not just in the United Kingdom, I can see a few heads nodding there, in other countries as well. So how do we do this? And the theory with the Mindfulness Initiative and the all-party parliamentary group in the United Kingdom helping to take this to other parliaments is, if you've got your decision makers who have felt the power of mindfulness, it will open up their hearts and minds, not to themselves, but also for their constituencies and their country. And they will want to develop this in policy. The international pharmaceutical industry, these are figures from 2009 from this marvelous book, Information is Beautiful. And that's the pharmaceutical turnover, £500 million a year. £21 billion is spent on giving freebies to doctors to promote antidepressants, and we'll know, or painkillers or sleeping tablets, and we know the mayhem that caused in America with the opioid pandemic. So antidepressants are fine. They have their use. They can stabilize people over the short term. I'm not a psychiatrist, psychologist, or a medical professional, but I think to have somebody on them for 20 or 30 years doesn't do them much good. So antidepressants are fine. Big Pharma are spending £20 billion a year in 2009 on promoting these, or over promoting these. The talking therapies is another way to help with depression or mental illness, but it takes 7 years to train a psychiatrist, and the queues, even in rich Western European nations, to see talking therapists are getting longer and longer and longer, especially after COVID. But that's to have a one-to-one, to be in the presence of a well-trained psychiatrist must be fantastic, but very few people can get that. And when I make these arguments to policymakers in South America or in the United Kingdom or the National Institute for Clinical Excellence, what I say is that you have Big Pharma that has got big money to promote. You've got professional organizations like the American Psychological Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the Royal College of Psychiatrists, the Royal College of Psychologists in the United Kingdom. In mindfulness, there is the Mindfulness Initiative, which about 3 people work for. There's the EAMBA, there's parliamentary groups. They do not have a powerful voice, certainly in comparison to the other ways of helping in this pandemic, or this mental health pandemic that we're suffering. So I and others have tried to get politicians to realize this at a national level, or even an international level, with the CPA and the European Union and what have you. But it also comes down not just to leave that to politicians and say, do your best, but also I think it comes down to each one of us as individuals. And I refer to Mindful Nation, Tim Ryan's book, which he wrote, I think, in 2012. It's a great book, I recommend it. And he goes through the benefits of mindfulness in many areas, in health, education, the armed forces. But at the end of every chapter is what you can do. Now, I think that you as an organization and you as individuals have more power than you think, especially in a democracy. These are the recommendations that Tim makes for education at the end of the chapter. You'll have to put it into your own country context. If you're interested in getting mindfulness and social and emotional learning into your child's school, get information about these programs from the resource sections at the end of the book. Write to your congressional representative or senator and suggest beefing up funding for Institute for Education Science. Bring information to your parent-teacher meeting and show your children's teacher what is happening. Write to your governor, local state representative and state senator. Ask them if their state is promoting these cutting-edge programs. If you are a teacher, start an informal mindfulness group with your fellow teachers. some teachers having a mindful eating table where they eat quietly. So these are practical examples which people who practice mindfulness can do. And we live in democracies. To make that case, and hopefully on a countrywide or even a European-wide basis, to make that case to Euro MPs, to national MPs, to your local health board, to your local education board, because a powerful case can be made. The evidence now is stronger and stronger, and the problems are getting bigger and bigger. The World Health Organization in 2011 made a prediction that by 2030, depression, just depression, not all mental illness, would be the biggest health burden in the whole of on the whole of the planet. Bigger than cancer, bigger than heart disease. So I think that 2030 figure has been brought forward because of COVID and post-COVID and long COVID, because of climate anxiety, because of political polarization, because of the Ukrainian war and the threat of nuclear war. All of this, I think, is making us as individuals and societies and populations more and more stressed, anxious and depressed. And mindfulness has a key role to play, because these are just some of the benefits that I've tried to put down when and they kind of fermented over the summer, and when I went to South America, to those 3 countries. Mindfulness has been scientifically proven for the National Institute for Clinical Excellence since 2004. And they NICE approve all medicines and medical interventions for the British National Health Service, which has its faults, but I think is quite highly regarded around the world. So the science has been proven. It's been in practice for 18 years in the United Kingdom and in the US, Canada, and Sweden to a lesser number of years. The take-up hasn't been huge, but it has been there. It's cost effective. It's cost effective in the long run. If introduced properly, there are minimal side effects. There are side effects, but compared to antidepressants, I think those side effects are minimal if there's proper screening and the proper teachers that are EAMBA or BAMBA recognized. And even if exercise is used as a means to stay mentally fit, you can fall over and break a leg. Cycling, you can fall off your bike. So every intervention has a possible side effect or a possible negative. It's cost effective. It's non-stigmatized. You can say, I'm going to see a psychiatrist, and people may look askance, or I'm on antidepressants. People say, oh, you're not, are you? But if you say you're going to a mindfulness lesson, somebody say, can I come along with you? It's non-stigmatizing. It's preventative. As John Kabat-Zinn said, work on your parachute before you need to open it. It's scalable. There was an argument and discussion in the mindfulness community before COVID. Should it go online? What are the benefits? That was answered during COVID. John Kabat-Zinn was doing mindfulness lessons to 25,000 people on a daily basis. It's scalable. It gives the individual agency. It's a difficult thing, though. I mean, you can say to somebody, you're having these problems. You can go on a 8-week course, 2.5 hours a week, 40 minutes practice every day for these 8 weeks, and you've got to keep it up for the rest of your life. Or here's some pills. Which one do you want? And they may choose the pills, but very rarely are those pills the side effects that you can lose your libido, you can lose your partner, you can spiral. They are not explained. So there's about 8 or 9 benefits, and it just doesn't deal with the getting people back to normal. If they carry on, it can lead to human flourishing as well. So the mindfulness has many, many benefits, and these choices for politicians on whether to invest in antidepressants, in whether to invest in training for psychiatrists, psychologists, and counsellors, or whether to invest in mindfulness teachers, need to be presented to those decision makers. I don't think the case has been made. We've tried in the United Kingdom. Jamie Bristow, myself, when I was an MP back in 2018, and Tim Lawton, the Conservative, co-chair of the all-party group, we took our case to NICE. We had the data for the use of antidepressants over the past 30 years. 7 million in 1991, 70 million by 2018, a huge increase, and depression was still rising. So a powerful case can be made, and it's all the more powerful this year because of documents like the CPA document, but also two more decisions by NICE in March of this year. And one of them was for, they recognize now that there were mindfulness could and should be used for less severe depression. It was one of 7 scientifically approved interventions that should be used before antidepressants are prescribed. So that was in March of this year. It's a big piece of research, and it was a big decision by NICE. And they also, earlier this year, looked at well-being interventions in the workplace, and they said of all of the interventions that they'd looked at, mindfulness was the best workplace intervention. I can send the links to these. The Mindfulness Initiative, Ruth at the Mindfulness Initiative, who is now co-director, these are weighty tomes. She's gone in there and kind of simplified it and put it into readable, digestible formats that you can use and you can send on or make presentations to your local politicians or your national politicians. So it's also been made progress in the armed forces. I was talking to the former Speaker of the Australian Parliament a few weeks ago. He said, how am I going to explain this mindfulness to my Conservative colleagues? Some, not just in Conservative groups, but in Labour groups as well. So it's a bit woolly. I say, well, tell them the United States Marines have been using this since 2009. In 2016, it was introduced to the United Kingdom armed forces. It has now been taken up by another 8 Western Alliance armed forces. So it's another good case to present if there is some criticism that it's a bit, this is Eastern mysticism, it's Buddhism through the back door, it's woolly, or whatever. You know, the armed forces of these countries are using it because it's beneficial. And I know it's upset some. They said no armed force should get it, but it has been used, it is being used, and it will be used. And it can be, you can use this, depending on your audience, on proof that mindfulness is being taken seriously. Just a few tips when I've talked to Mindfulness Initiative or mindfulness advocates in other countries, how to start. You can do a word search for your parliamentary records. In the United Kingdom, that is called Hansard. So every word that is spoken in the chamber or on a select committee is typed in and recorded. And you can do a word search for this. You can put in mindfulness and see who's asked parliamentary questions on it, who's used the word mindfulness in debate, which committees are studying mental health has mindfulness been used there. You can ask, you can consult, or you can go online and find out what legislation is coming forward this year. Is anything to deal with mental health or social and emotional learning? If you had a mindfulness initiative, you could present a case to them with the facts and the figures and practice and the science, and it can be tailor-made to your country. And these if we can get together the case, and maybe this requires some cooperation between mindfulness initiatives around the world and politicians around the world and the EAMBA and BAMBA to try and get the quotes together from politicians, to try and get the international statistics on mental ill health, on depression rates, on prescribing rates for antidepressants, on waiting times for to see talking therapists, waiting times for children, waiting times for adults, whether we can get this key information together, whether we can get the photo shots of mindfulness being used in parliaments. You know, we had an event, an international event in 2017, suggested by Tim Ryan. We had it in the House of Commons, in the British Parliament. 44 politicians from 14 countries came down to meditate in London in the House of Commons. The Speaker of the House of Commons opened up his staterooms, all gold and oak. John Kabat-Zinn flew over from Boston. John said to me, Chris, this normalizes mindfulness. You know, to have the Mother of Parliaments hosting an event like this. So how do we know, can we provide quotes to normalize it? We've got a quote from the Petra de Sutter, who is the Deputy Prime Minister of Belgium on mindfulness. Esther Oerhand, I think, from the Netherlands, she speaks about mindfulness has helped her as a politician to keep her values. As a politician, you go into politics and you've got your values, you want to change the world, and then your constituents push you this way, and your political party pulls you that way, and your wife and your children pull you another way, and you've got you start to neglect your own well-being. So you've got all of these pressures. So Esther says mindfulness has helped to keep her values, her anchor. Yoko Alender, an MP from Estonia, who's chair of the Environmental Committee, said, if we can't lead ourselves, how can we lead our constituents? How can we lead our people? You know, there's a whole wealth of quotes which the Mindfulness Initiative in the United Kingdom has got. Should we be sharing these with EAMBA and BAMBA? Should we be helping to co-produce the case for mindfulness, so that you can take this, the pictures, the quotes, the statistics, the stories, the science, and make these powerful cases to decision makers in your locality, your region, your country, and indeed the European Union. So I know it sounds you've got enough on your plate already, but you cannot just leave it to the politicians to do this. It's we live in a democracy. It's two-way. You know, you have the right to send your message up there, and we are dropping dollops of mindfulness in parliaments around the world, and MPs are opening their hearts and their minds to the issue of mental illness and human flourishing, not just for the 25% who are suffering, but for the 100% of the population. So if I could be of any help to you, if you secure these meetings and you want me to zoom in, or if you're at a conference, organizing a conference, and you want me to zoom in or come over, I can do that. We've got an international meeting of the Mindfulness Initiative's Global Network in January. Maybe it's something I'll float there, that we've had this meeting with the EAMBA, see what your reactions are now, and if there's any questions. Should we be getting the information together to present the case across countries and continents? So I'll leave it at that. If there's any questions you've got to ask, I'll take them.
Thank you, Chris. And I've seen so many smiles, you know, on our faces, and somehow hope, I think, is the quality that you're seeing. I mean, you're a wonderful speaker, and you're also bringing some practicality into the field, and that's very refreshing. So the floor is open for questions. I mean, you offer so many inputs. So I don't know, there are colleagues from all around Europe here, and I'm sure there has been some questions or curiosity, or yeah, please, Daniela.
Yeah, first of all, Chris, thanks for this shower of information, inspiration.
Yeah.
Quite hard to keep up. One thing I really don't want to miss, and you promised to send it later, but maybe you can at least maybe zoom into the latest research on the results on research mindfulness in the workplace.
Yes, I can send, if I send that out to Teresa, and then she's got your email addresses, she can send it, send that out. So I'll send that out. The workplace, the less severe depression. I haven't got the original link from 2004 for repeat episode depression, but you can look up that online because it's so well established. And I'll send a link to this CPA document for mindfulness in parliamentary workplaces and other wellbeing interventions. So I can send that out to Teresa, and she can send it off to you.
Thank you.
All the resources that you will send, I put the link already into the chat. We will update the post, and you will be able to find all those resources there, including the recording. So the link is already there.
Right. Lovely. Okay. Any other questions? Deirdre.
Thanks, Chris. You mentioned the continuation of the practices in the Parliament, and I got the piece where, was the continuation 2 events a year, or was there more than that? I just wasn't clear.
In the United Kingdom Parliament, I think to start off with, we had 3 courses per year.
Okay.
One in January, one in the spring and summer, and one in the autumn. That was for MPs or politicians, sorry, from the Lords and the Commons who hadn't been on a course. So that was 3 times a year. Then it was reduced to twice a year. And then on top of that, Chris Cullen would do, for the ones that had been on courses in the past, they would have a continuing mindfulness program for them. So for 36 weeks a year, Parliament sat for 36 weeks. If you'd been on a course before, on a Tuesday at 5:30 or 6:15, you could sit and meditate, guided meditation from Chris. And that was kept up for 8 years.
Wow.
And the Oxford Mindfulness Foundation, which I'm a board member, said they couldn't continue it any longer. So we took it to the new British speaker, Tim Lawton, Conservative MP, Jess Morden, Labour MP, myself when I was out of office in January 2020. And I think Chris Cullen and Jamie Bristow were there as well. We presented the case to him again, he was convinced, and then he put it out to tender. So for 8 years, the Oxford Mindfulness Foundation delivered mindfulness to British politicians, and they were supposed to make donations from Dharma once they'd been on the course. But I don't think it was enough to kind of financially viable. So they ceased that, and the contract was issued, and a Waris won it, Chris Tamjidi, a wonderful teacher from Germany, and who introduced mindfulness to German Parliament, the EU Commission, and has now got the contract for the British Parliament. So we're really grateful for the British for speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle. He also, I've written an article. I've only ever written one article in my life, and it took me 2 years. But the American Psychological Association asked me to write an article about mindfulness in politics and around the world. So they did a double edition of the Humanistic Psychologist, the first double edition they've ever done, and it was all on mindfulness. And it was co-edited by Belinda Kong, a professor from Australia, and lots of science in there. But there's 5 pieces from Buddhist monks in here to kind of redress that. You've got the mastery and you've got the mystery, the mastery of science, but the mystery as well. So it's I'm not sure if you could still buy these, but if you work in a university, you probably got access to it for nothing. I can't send it out because it would break the rules. But I think you can buy individual pieces of my pieces in there. There's another 17, I think, in there, so you can gain access to an individual one or the whole document. But I took this to Parliament to present it in March, and the Speaker said he would do a promotional video for our next mindfulness practice. He'd already paid for it a year before, so he's going to do a promotional video to politicians in the United Kingdom and to the staff of Parliament and the staff of the MPs. He's also in the contract was to deliver mindfulness to the offices of MPs in 650 constituencies around the United Kingdom, obviously all done virtually. So he's a great fella, and he offered to do that. He's also written to the former Speaker of the Australian Parliament, telling them of the benefits of to the United Kingdom Parliament of mindfulness, and we're making progress in Australia on a cross-party basis. So there's good practice out there, and you know the Speaker of the House of Commons, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, has been a big friend of mindfulness over the past 2 years. I'm really grateful to him. Yes, Katharina.
I have one thing that struck me and one question. When you said that the lobby of psychological psychiatrist organizations is so strong, and of course we can also count the pharma lobby for the antidepressants. Is there something you would advise that we could create a lobby in that same way? Because what I hear you saying is that two factors have been important. Persons who have taken everything on their shoulders to bring this forward, and lobby groups on the other side who have carried this. So do you have any advice how we might be able to create such a lobby group? I mean, EAMBA is there. We have 29 members, and we calculate that they have about 4,000 members in Europe. So the quantity is there. Could we do something like this?
So there are 4,000 members of EAMBA in the whole of Europe?
No, the individual members are members of the local associations. We bring together the 29 teacher associations.
Right.
So when we count their members, we calculate that they have about 4,000 members.
Yeah, well, that's
meaning we could reach those people, and exactly that could be powerful.
It's a powerful lobby, and in fact, some people in the mindfulness community do not like the word lobby because it sounds like big pharma. But I think we have a duty to present the evidence that we know how feel and teach. We know the impact it's had on us as individuals and on the people that we've helped. And if we sit back and say, no, we shouldn't lobby, lobbying's wrong, then the others, big pharma, will be laughing. We have a time-honored tradition that goes back thousands of years, proven now by Western science to make it more acceptable to Western governments. But who was it that said if mindfulness was a drug, we'd be sold out, because there would be that promotion. And you are all individuals. You are connected to 4,000 other individuals. If you were given the case, if you were given the statistics on a European level to take it to your Euro MPs and your Euro ministers, if you've got 4,000 people, that's a lot of lobbying that you can do. If we can help with the quotes, with the statistics, You can do freedom of information requests as well. Certainly in the United Kingdom, we have FOIs. That might be better if it comes from a third person. They can find the information for you. Then you go on. I've been given this. I hope you don't show this to this recording to the to government ministers. I'm telling you all the tricks of the trade here. But you can flush that information out. I've put down. I think it was 700 written parliamentary questions on mindfulness and well-being to different departments over the past 15 years to flush information out. And some of the information that I've got back from these written parliamentary questions was horrific. 32.3% of 15 to 25-year-olds in the United Kingdom have one or more mental condition. 85% of prisoners in the United Kingdom suffer with mental health issues. The prescribing for antidepressants in 1991 was 7 million. In 2018, it was 70 million. I flushed these answers out through written parliamentary questions. You can legitimately ask your elected representatives in your national parliament, could you please find out? Could you write to the minister and find out, or could you put down a question and find out how long are school-aged children waiting to see talking therapists in each of the past 5 years? How many antidepressants were issued in our region in each of the past 30 years? If you could, knowledge is power. If you have that knowledge, you have every right to get it through FOIs, through written parliamentary questions, through searches of Hansard or your parliamentary records. So make your case, state your case, and it's a powerful case.
Yeah, thank you. I took a note of your kind offer to help us with these quotes and information. The big thing that we are running into with the community is that the teachers themselves are struggling. Yeah. So to put another burden on their shoulders, to be ambassadors and invest some of their time into this, what we can do is offer them as much information and photographs, quotes, maybe answers, as you just inspired us to do. But doing it would take their time and energy. And this is at the moment a really big problem because most teachers are struggling to have enough participants. And as you said at the beginning, they also have mortgages and other things to pay. So we are in this, we're squeezed in this.
Yeah, but I mean, I was a member of Parliament for 21 years. I used to have 3 surgeries, advice surgeries, where people could come through the front door and bring their issues to me. And I had 60,000 electors and, thousands, if not tens of thousands of people over the course of my 21 years in Parliament had come to see me. I asked the British Prime Minister, Theresa May, about mindfulness. And she came back, she knew all about it. And she said, somebody had come to her advice surgery to ask her about mindfulness. And when they did that, her advisor, who was sat next to her, said, I've been on the parliamentary course. So prime ministers have been lobbied. I'm not sure what or questioned by their constituents. I'm not sure what the arrangements are in your own country if you have direct access to a member of Parliament, if they hold open surgeries where people can walk through the front door. If you can't do that, at least you can write to them. So it is an investment in time. You've got to send them an email. You've got to travel to their office or their parliament, and you've got to spend an hour with them. But quite often that's therapeutic in itself. If you do it with the passion that I know that you will have, you can say, look, this is the size of the problem in our area. I have been teaching this for 20 years or 15 years. These are the benefits of it. These are the risks, minimal. These are other interventions. These are the benefits. These are the risks. These are the waiting times. The demand is out there for our services. We have the supply, 4,000 teachers across Europe. Will you help us meet that demand and supply to minimize the stress and the suffering, and to maximize human flourishing. You know, it will take time, but it may be 2 or 3 hours on, you know, to draft it, to travel there, to see them, and to get the answers back from them. But I think it's therapeutic, and it will bring benefits, and it's how a democracy works. Yeah. Hi, Jed.
Chris, do you or others have experience with approaching politicians on the local level? I ask because I'm thinking about approaching local politicians next year with the theme of mindfulness. I haven't done yet so far.
I haven't. We've been mainly concentrating in the United Kingdom Parliament and parliaments around the world, but it's something I have flagged in the Mindfulness Initiative. Should we be taking this to cities, big cities in the first place?
Yeah.
To take it to, you know, we have limited capacity ourselves, but a city approach would be good. And I know that in America, they've got mindful cities.
Yeah.
3 cities. I think it's Boulder, Colorado. No, what's it called? It's a rude name. Something Hole.
Yeah, Jackson Hole or something. Yeah,
Jackson Hole. Yeah, in Colorado.
Yeah.
It's I think it's Boston and it's Flint, Michigan.
Yeah,
we're taking a citywide approach there. Last year, I was asked to speak to the National League of Cities, and their trainer, they provide training for, I think it's 2,000 mayors and local representatives in cities across America. She asked me to speak to them about mindfulness, the role that mindfulness could do to help them as politicians, but also to help in a policy perspective.
Yeah.
So I haven't got any direct experience of that myself, but it is something that a nut that definitely needs to be cracked, especially if you cannot make progress at a national level.
Yeah.
Then perhaps take it on as a city level.
Yes.
But it's a great idea, I think, to take it to local representatives.
Yeah.
And it's what Tim Ryan recommends in this. Go to your local, you know, the school that your kids go to.
Mm-hmm.
Go to your local health board. You know, take that local. What's it saying? All politics is local.
I have trained one member of a city council as an MBSR teacher.
Oh,
so, and maybe I can use next year his connections to broaden to broaden up this.
And that's what we find. Well, you will have found personally, I'm sure, that you know you're introduced to mindfulness and it changes you. And the title of my article for this is "Be the Change You Want to See." You know, as politicians, you're saying this should change, that should change, but quite often it's you that should change. And many people do feel that change. Many politicians who have practiced mindfulness. Tim Lawton, a Conservative politician, said that it's changed him. It's made him disagree better. Lovely terminology. You know, he disagrees with people, but he disagrees better. And I think that's what we need in politics at the moment. You know, at the moment it's like this in certain legislatures, but we need to disagree with respect. I was described as a knuckle-dragging torturer's assistant by a right-wing comedy sketch writer for the Daily Mail. And 3 years ago, when I asked a question to Theresa May, the Speaker of the House of Commons, John Bercow then, stood up at the end and said, "The honourable gentleman is indeed a mindful fellow, but it wasn't always the case." You know, from a political thug to a mindful fellow, I've been on the journey. Hiya, Ragana.
Hello, thank you for this wonderful speech. And I would ask you something about, you mentioned before that you're thinking about mindful planet that we need right now. And did you have any approach to the United Nations, maybe?
Yes, I was asked to speak there in 2018 in person, and Jamie Bristow came as well, and Daniel Goleman was the star of the show. But we got in there. But they asked me to speak specifically on mindfulness and the Sustainable Development Goals. And I was also asked to speak virtually by the United Nations last year, 2021. Well, that was on a different subject. So there is interest in the United Nations. Our Colombian representative, Paula Ramirez, was employed by the United Nations to go and teach mindfulness to refugees from Myanmar, inside Iraq, inside Palestine, and in the South Sudan. She actually lived in the South Sudan to teach them for a year. So the United Nations knows about mindfulness. There is traction in certain elements or certain policy areas. But when I go to these parliaments, I use this. This is the Houses of Parliament now. There's Big Ben, and it's a snow globe. So I say that, you know, in the House of Parliament there are 1,400 politicians, and each one of their minds is a little bit like that. It's fractured. It's all up in the air. And by teaching them mindfulness, it can help calm their minds, but it can also have an effect on the institution. And I think mindfulness is best done at an institutional level. And that's what we've succeeded in after 8 years, to get the support of the Speaker of the House of Commons, who's prepared to do a promotional video and endorsements and what have you. So having the funding in place, having the support right at the very top, having the support of the Wellbeing Department in Parliament, but also the Training Department. You know, there are two routes that mindfulness can be paid for within a legislature. If you take the executive function, it'll make people speak better. It'll make politicians not lose their compassion or their self-compassion. It will help them focus. You can say these are executive functions, this is continual professional development, or you can say it's well-being as well, because there's a piece of research by a Conservative MP called Dan Poulter in 2016, where he circulated a questionnaire to 650 MPs, got 173 responses. It showed that there were massive stress levels, mental health levels for British politicians. So if it can be handled from a well-being perspective or an executive function perspective, from the training department or the well-being department. But if it's done at an institutional level, that's the best way to do it, whether that be a hospital, a health service, a big corporation, or a small firm. You know, if there's appreciation and recognition throughout, then it's more likely to have beneficial effects. Because there are some, and some on the left say that, and on the right, that mindfulness is the new opium of the masses. That it's being used to keep workers down, to make them more resilient, so they can take more pressure. And you know, and others have counted that. Every mindfulness teacher I have ever come across does not want to use mindfulness as a shield, so people can take more and more stress and then break down or burn out a little bit later. You know, if the whole system is sprinkled, the ecosystem is sprinkled in mindfulness, that will not happen. And in the meantime, people do need, if they have no protection, they do need that shield.
Thank you.
Yes, Sasha.
Hi, Chris. Thank you very much, and hello to everyone. Could I just ask you, I'm really intrigued about your visit to Croatia, because it's a neighboring country to both Serbia, Montenegro, and the West Balkans, which is kind of quite a particular sort of mentality. So would you be able to maybe express some of your insights as how it was received, and what were the minimum requirements actually for that mental setup that you encountered there for actually considering mindfulness to be an intervention worthwhile considering?
Well, can I first say in Croatia, in virtually every country I've been to, progress is only made because there is a catalyst, a person of passion and integrity, and who has a desire to take it forward. And that person in Croatia was Eva Mia Kruslin, who I first came across in 2016 when I was out of Parliament. She, I'm not sure how she got in contact with me, but she wanted me to, she was doing an MBA in the Kennedy School of Government in Harvard. And she asked me if I would speak in Harvard. And I said, yes, I'm going to pay for my flight over there, put me up in a hotel. And then a general election was called and I had to cancel. And I ended up doing a Zoom instead. But she engineered this. She convinced the dean of one of the deans in Harvard to pay for this, to get me out there, to agree to it. She's a great persuader. She went back from Harvard, back to Croatia, and then said, "We've got to deliver this in the Croatian Parliament." And she identified the National Training School as and offered lessons. I'm not sure if they were paid for or what, but she has been delivering lessons there for the past 2 years. So it takes a person of passion. It's 2016 and it's now, well, next year it's 2023. It's 7 years later. I've been working with the Australian Parliament since 2015. That's 8 years, and they still haven't quite delivered it. So it's a long-term process. You need that resilience, you need that tenacity, even though you might not succeed. Sometimes you just need to rest back and let the situation develop and have another bite at it a little bit later. So can I just say that the Mindfulness Initiative Global Network hasn't got any representation from Montenegro, from Bulgaria. I'm not sure if we got one from, no, we got from Hungary, but not Bulgaria. We've got no one from Serbia, and we've got no, I think that's, we've got somebody from Croatia. So if any of those, Dragana, Sasha, and anybody that those countries that I've just mentioned, if they would like to be a representative on our Mindfulness Initiative Global Network, we meet twice a year, 2 days at the beginning of the year, 2 days at the end, in the middle of the year, because it's we meet in the evening of one day and the early morning of another day to cover all the time zones. We ask people to give feedback to what's happened in their politics or in their policy in their country, in these 50 countries. Usually we get only about 26 of the 50 turn up, but they report back, and we take that and then we distribute it to the other 50. So if we had 3 members from those countries that I've just mentioned now, you're all in EAMBA, you could take this best practice from around the world back to your organization, EAMBA. So if Teresa, if you can, well, if any of those, your delegates or members want to come onto that, let me know. I think we've got representation in the other countries, so I wouldn't be able to push anybody else out to make way. But it'd be lovely to have you on there and to extend our membership.
Thank you. And
if, yeah, we got 2 from Bulgaria there. If you want to sort it out, maybe one more wants to do it one time and one another time. So yeah, that would be great. Any more questions? Is that a thumb going up there, Dragana?
No, I'm just thinking, you know, here we are still struggling with basic democracy in our parliament, you know. And so I'm thinking how it will be possible to come to the MPs and represent them. Mindfulness is idea and concept which will help our country and citizens of the country. And you know, it's interesting, yeah. And
A very unmindful way of doing that is to say, well, they're doing it in Croatia next door.
yeah,
Do we want to be left behind?
yeah,
It's
exactly.
very unmindful, but quite often it's.
You understand our, yeah. Yeah. As they can, we could, yeah. But
Yeah, they can, we can't. We don't want to be left behind. And if you can't take it to the Parliament, maybe you can take it to the health service, or to your schools, or to the workplace.
yeah, I think maybe we should start with our families and friends and the colleagues, and you know, and little, or with big roof, as you said, with big shield like maybe Parliament in England, or maybe United Nations, and put that in the front of our governments and said, this is a new planet, a new world now.
Yes, absolutely, and things are moving at a pace. When I went to Chile, Uruguay, and Brazil, we've got strong representation from South America. They're thinking of operating on a continental level now, that they're going to have their own Mindful Initiative regional network, and they can swap best practice. They can invite each other to go to conferences. They can share information, and that's the same in Africa as well. There's a lovely lady, Elizabeth MPC, who wants to get like 15 African nations to converge and have a meeting on mindfulness in politics there. We're making good progress in Australia and New Zealand. So that, you know, we can, when the pitch is right, you can say it's taken off here or taking off there. At the moment, it's well embedded in the European countries. But I appreciate that, you know, some countries it's not right for them, but at this point in time, and you'd be wise. You know, in some countries they've said we'll wait for the next change of government. It might be more amenable to us. So it's down, because each country's history, geography, politics, religion, philosophy varies. We did do in 2016, we looked at the parliaments we had introduced it to it, and came up with a blueprint of about 9 points on how to introduce it to a parliament. Lead with the science, get the best teacher you can, do it on a cross-party basis, ensure that there's privacy for people if they do attend. Attach yourself to a prestigious university in your own country if you can, or another one as well. So we drew up these nine points. Avoid religion. Religion. I know it upsets some people. In France and in the US, it's illegal to have religion taught in schools. So we came up with these 9 points, and then we said, you know, that to be considered, because each country is totally different. In Argentina, the mindfulness advocate there tried to take it to politicians. They said she's Buddhism through the back door. So she changed it from mindfulness to attention. So that's the name of on her email now. It's attention. So, you know, and again, some people say, well, you know, you've lost the purity, but it's horses for courses. You know, you have to adapt to that situation. I was Skyping with or Zooming with a woman from Australia on Monday, and she was explaining the Aboriginal perspective. Sorry, Aboriginal, the First Nation people perspective. And in Africa, they said the same. Okay, Chris, you've got your Western science, you've got your Eastern mysticism, but what about our African heritage, our Ubuntu? I am me through we. You know, what about the village raises a child, which Hillary Clinton used to go on? That's an African saying. The Lakota Indians, they had when they made their political decisions, they would say it's not just about us and our children and our grandchildren even, but what about the seventh generation? So they have these wisdom traditions which deserve respect. And in Wales, and I'm speaking to you from Wales now, we had a future generations, the Future Generations Act, and there's a commissioner that examines all political decisions to make sure that the well-being of future generations is considered. So there's, you know, there's all of these things to consider. And this wonderful person from Adelaide said, wouldn't it be great if the United Nations could convene a meeting on mindfulness and well-being from an indigenous perspective, from the countries, with indigenous populations. You know, we could get this seventh generation principle in other countries, or I am me through we. It's fascinating.
Yeah, Magdalena, you wanted to ask something.
I just wanted to say thank you for everything you said. I'm from Croatia, and I do not know Eva in person.
Yeah.
But you struck me with that sentence, what can you do now? Yeah. So I think I might do some little steps now.
Yeah.
So thank you. We are such a little country, and I think we have
good football team.
And we have football team, that's right. The whole world knows for Croatia now. So let's make mindfulness in Croatia as popular as football.
Yeah.
No, but
the biggest gains in well-being have been from small nations. Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, I think she was elected in 2018 or 19. She got elected on a well-being manifesto. The progress that we've made in Wales on this Future Generations Commission, we're just a nation of 3 million people. In Scotland, they're making great progress. In Ireland as well, you know, these are small nations that are making big progress. They're showing the bigger nations how to do it.
Yeah, there are quite of us in Croatia, but I think this next step would be to connect and make a network.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I knew for Eva because I'm following her on the internet, but never met her in person. So
yeah,
we might do something about this. Thank you.
And if any of you want to follow me on LinkedIn, the only thing I post on there, I don't post on politics anymore. I'm not on Facebook or Twitter. The only one I do is LinkedIn. I've got 1,400 people I'm linked in with, and they're virtually all in the well-being world. So if you want to connect on there, I'm available and you can get a message to me.
Thank you.
Thank you. With my Hotmail address as well.
Thank you.
Right, I've got a curry going downstairs, and I told my wife I would be there at 7, so I think I've overshot. So it's been lovely listening to you and talking to you and exchanging, and any help I can give. If you do set up any meetings, let me know if you need an input from me. I'll be there for you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Chris, for your generosity. It's always a pleasure to listen to your wisdom and also your practicality as well, and your passion.
Sly politics.
Right. So we are mindful of time, and it's 5 to 7:30 here in the UK or whatever Portugal time. So we thank you very much, and thank you also for offering your time after this meeting in case it's needed, and we probably will create a lobby sooner or later. Thank you
very much, Teresa, for asking me.
Oh my God. Thank you very much, and thank you for all the colleagues in Europe to be present in this meeting. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone.